The third conic section we will talk about will be ellipses. The definition of ellipse is the set of all points P in a plane such that the distances between P and 2 points called the foci is a constant. So in this picture, you see point P, so it's the set of all points P as I go around, okay, such that the distance between these two fixed points, this one and this one, this distance plus this distance, is going to be a constant. No matter where P is, D1 plus D2 will always equal the same constant. So basically, there are two shapes to an ellipse. One would be this one on the left, which has a horizontal major axis. And this one has a vertical major axis. The equations of these will be x minus h squared over a squared plus y minus k squared over b squared equals 1. Always equals 1. On this one, it will be x minus h squared over b squared plus y minus k squared over a squared equals 1. Notice the only thing that changed was my a and b are flip-flopped here, and this should be a plus. Okay, that's the only thing that changed. And what you're going to come to know is that since a is underneath the x, that will mean the longer axis will be on the x. Since a is underneath the y, the longer axis is on the y. The thing that you need to know how to figure out is where are the foci. The foci are at c squared equals a squared minus b squared. Notice that my vertex is at A0 or 0A. My co-vertices are at B0 on the vertical one or 0B on the horizontal one. To find the foci, you use this equation since my foci are C, 0. This will make better sense when we get an example with actual numbers. So here's an example of an ellipse, and based on what we learned on the previous page, I can see that my bigger number is underneath the y, so this would be a squared, which means this is going to be b squared. This is my h, and this is my k. Okay, just like always, the h and k tells me where I don't have a vertex here, I have a center, so it will tell me where the center is. 2, -1, should be right there. Let's see if I can make that darker. Okay, and then my a squared and my b squared will tell me where I move from the focus. It's kind of like a radius, but I have two different now. So my a is going to equal obviously the square root of 36, and b is going to equal 4, square root of 16. So since a is under y, I'm going to move parallel to the y-axis. I'm going to move 6 up, six down, and this then would be my major axis. And the coordinates of those would be called my vertices, because they're along the longer axis, which is called the major axis. So that would be the ordered pair 2, and that's 5, and 2, negative 6. Now my co-vertices are along, my B is underneath my X. So I'm going to move along parallel to my X from my center, and I'm going to move the square root of 16, which is 4 either way. So that would give me my co-vertices. And those would be 6, negative 1, and negative 2, negative 1. Now all I do is I connect, and not great connecting, sorry. That's not bad. And that would be my ellipse. Now, I have this dark blue line in here, royal blue line in here, and that's called the major axis. So I know the length of the major axis is 2 times A, which would be 8. No, sorry, 12. The length of the minor axis would be this axis right here. Is 4 times 2, which would be 8. To find the foci, the equation again is c squared equals a squared minus b squared. Now, do I need to memorize this formula? I need to know that I'm subtracting my a squared and b squared, but it's pretty obvious that a squared has to go first since a squared is a positive. If I subtract them the other direction, I'd be taking the square root of a negative. So my foci are going to be, remember, I already have a squared, 36 minus 16, which is going to give me 20. So C is plus or minus 4, 2 root 5. I leave my foci in simplified radicals, but obviously I need to know what approximately that number is. So 2 root 5 is approximately 4.5. So I'm going to come up 4.5. That's the distance from the center to the foci. So I'm going to come up 4.5 and put my foci in there. I'm going to make that a little darker for you. How about this? And I'm going to go down 4.5 and put my foci in. So the coordinates of my foci would be from my center, right here, I'm for sure 2. And what I'm doing is I'm going from negative 1 and I'm adding 4.5 or 2 radical 5, and I'm subtracting it. So my x is going to be 2. My y is going to be negative 1 plus or minus 2 root 5. Because I'm adding 2.5 to get to this point and subtracting 2.5 to get to this point. Okay, so let's complete the square on this guy. And just like a circle, I have 2 squared variables. I have an x squared and a y squared, so I'm going to kind of double complete the square. I'm going to bring the x's together. And I'm going to bring the y's together. So I'm going to add that 169y squared over. I already have the 338y here. And I'm going to leave the 443 on the right side of the equation. I'm going to factor out a 4. I would love to just divide everything by 4 or divide everything by 32, but it doesn't work like that. So I'm going to factor out a 4 and leave a space. And I'm going to factor out a 169. And leave a space. Okay, so now I'm going to complete the square, and if I take 8 and divide by 2 and square it, I'm adding 16. But remember, it's inside the parentheses, so what I'm actually adding is 64, so I'm going to add 64 over here. Negative 2 divided by 2 and squared, I'm adding 1, So in actuality, I'm adding 169. So what I get over here is 4x plus 4 squared plus 169 y minus 1 squared equals 676. Now in an ellipse, everything has to be set equal to 1, so I'm going to divide all of this by the 676, and oops, this is going to be x plus 4 squared over 169 plus y minus 1 squared over 4 equals 1. Okay, now I'm going to do a little side graph over here. It's not going to be as pretty as with graph paper, but you put yours on graph paper. My class, you know that I don't accept your notes if the graphs aren't graph paper. So I see that my center is negative 4, 1. I see that a squared is 169, which means that a is 13. No. Yes. B squared is 4, which means that b is 2. Since the bigger number is under the x, that means that I'm going to be wide and not tall. So I'm going to plot the center for negative 4, 1. And I know that the a is under the x. So I'm going to go 13 in either direction. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. I'm going to go 13 in the other direction. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, I also know that the b squared is under the y. So I'm going to go 2 in the direction of the y-axis and 2 in the direction of the y-axis. So this ends up being my guy. So the length of the major axis will be 26, the minor axis will be 4. So I'm doing, to get this, I'm doing 2 times 13. So 2 times 13 to get major, 2 times 2 to get minor. C squared I know is a squared minus b squared, so that's the square root of 165. That cannot be simplified, so c is going to stay at plus or minus the square root of 165. And the square root of 165 is equivalent to approximately 12.8. So those are going to be way out there by 13. So this is going to be a foci, and this is going to be a foci. And the ordered pairs of the foci will be plus negative 4. So I'm going from negative 4, I'm adding square root of 165, or I'm subtracting square root of 165. So, and the y value is going to stay at 1. I just noticed we never got coordinates for the vertices or the co-vertices. So this co-vertex would be negative 4 and 2, 4. I'm going up 2 from the vertex. Nope. Sorry, that would be 3. And this co-vertex would be negative 4 going down 2 from the vertex, negative 1. This vertex, so these are the vertices. My vertices are on the major axis, so this vertex would be Negative 4 plus 13 would get me to 9. And the y would be 1. And this vertex right here would be negative 4 minus 13, so negative 17, 1. Sorry about that. Okay, so the last thing we need to do is just look at a couple of examples of writing equations of ellipses. And here's one, so if you can pause your computer and write this equation down. So we're looking to write the equation of an ellipse with vertices at negative 2, 1, and I'm just going to randomly plot them on here, and negative 2, 9, and co-vertices at negative 4, 5, and 0, 5. So if these are vertices, and these are co-vertices, that means my major axis is up and down. It's vertical. The longest part is along my y-axis. So that means I know that the equation I'm going to use is x minus h squared over b squared plus y minus k squared over a squared, because the bigger number is along the y-axis. So the first thing I need to do is find the center. Well, it makes sense that the center is right in the middle of these, right? So I know this x right here is negative 2, and I know this y right here is 5. So this point right here has to be negative 2, 5. So my center is negative 2, 5. All right, now that I know that this is negative 2, 5, what is this distance? Well, if I'm going up to 9, then this distance has to be 4. And this distance right here, if I'm going from negative 2 to negative 4, this distance has to be 2. So that tells me that A is 4 and B is 2, which means that A squared is 16 and B squared is 4. So now that I have my center, my A squared and my B squared, I can go ahead and fill it into the equation. X minus the x squared over the b, the short one, plus y minus the y squared over the long one equals 1. Okay, last example. So if you can pause your computer and write this down. And then we're going to roughly sketch this as well. So I have vertices at negative 3, 4, and 9, 4. I'm also given my foci at 1, 4, and 5, 4. Okay, so I know then that my center has to be right here in the middle, which would be 3, 4. Half the battle done. I know from here to here is A, because these are vertices, and this must be my major axis because vertices are on the major axis. So I know my center is 3, 4. My A is from 3 to 9, which would be 6. So my A squared is 36. Now what I'm missing is my B. Really, I'm missing my B squared. So why do they give me this information about C? Remember, this distance right here is C. So this distance is 2. So I know that C is 2 and C squared is 4. So if you remember my equation, C squared equals A squared minus B squared. C squared equals A squared minus B squared. Solve that out. So B squared is 32. I don't even need to follow through and do a square root because all I need is B squared. I now have my center, my A squared, my B squared. I know this is my major axis coming along from vertex to vertex. So this is a wide, my long is parallel to my x, which means the bigger number is under the x. So x minus 3 squared over the a squared plus y minus 4 squared over the b squared equals 1. And that's it.